Hey, it's Matt. You're listening to episode 99 of the Looking Sideways Action Sports podcast. Hope you enjoy the show. I've got a perfect guest for such an auspicious episode number. It's the great David Carson. First and foremost, widely regarded as probably the world's most influential graphic designer. He changed the visual landscape for Western consumer media over the last 20-25 years. I don't think that's an exaggeration. He's also got a massive affinity with action sports, particularly surfing, and through the fact that he got his start working on magazines such as Transworld. Anyway, anyone who's worked in media, or anyone who's involved in graphic design, or anyone who's got a passing interest in graphic design has a view on Carson, and I sure do. So my David Carson tale's probably quite a familiar one, really. Back in the early 90s, as I've talked about a fair few times on the show, I was working for White Lines magazine, which was a very formative time for me. And I remember really clearly when I first went down to see the guys at Permanent Publishing in probably 96, 97, and ended up realising I was going to be working full-time on White Lines. I came back from that trip pretty daunted because I was 20, I think, 2021, but also totally fired up at the creative possibilities ahead. At the time, I had a few influences, Rad Magazine, which I've also talked extensively about on this podcast, and David Carson's book, The End of Print, which seemed to me, as a young kid starting out in this world, to be a thrillingly anarchic and freewheeling, rule-book tearing up take on how to create magazines and indeed art in general. And when I discovered that he'd also started out working on titles like Transworld, I was also even more inspired and impressed. After all, if he could do it, then why couldn't we? Fast forward 20 years to when I'm putting together this much mentioned wish list of guests, and of course David Carson's one of the first names on the list. And to be honest, that's something I kind of totally forgot about, just because I thought it was so unlikely that I'd ever get the chance to meet him. Anyway, then, and there's a big name drop coming up, one late September 2019 Monday morning, I wake up to a WhatsApp message from none other than David Benedek, who's asking, would you mind doing me a favour to go meet David Carson at Gatwick Airport and pick up some signed prints for me? Now, obviously, I replied, yep, with quite quickly, reckon he'll do a podcast at the same time. To which David replied, no chance, but I'll ask him. 5 minutes later, Benedict replies, he's up for it, you just need to meet him at Gatwick Airport tomorrow evening. So it was that me and a visibly excited Owen Tozer, who counts Carson as his graphic design hero, headed up to a bizarrely inappropriate / appropriate airport hotel in Crawley, of all places, to meet and interview the great man himself. Sometimes I've got to admit this job is ace. It was a very funny night. We had a great conversation. We had a few beers with Carson, took some pictures. Generally, yeah, you know, bit of a pinch yourself moment, this one for us, really. I'll be back at the end with the old roundup and housekeeping corner, but here it is, me and David Carson, The End of Print. Enjoy. How you doing?
Hey.
How's the jet lag?
Medium. Just in from India, which I was surprised and had no idea. I'd never been, and it's alarming. Well, that's not quite the right word, but very similar to the Caribbean, tropical and plant-wise, coconut trees and all the same vegetation. And so I made a point to look on the map, and yeah, it's the same kind of zone,
same latitude.
But I wasn't expecting that, you know, because you see only the crowded city, awful photos, and kind of. Anyway, so it was nice. So, and I heard reports of surf. I didn't actually see any, but. I didn't see surf, but they told me north and south, but it hasn't really caught on there. It's not a big part of the culture.
Yeah, there's the islands, aren't there, in the south where you need...
The south they kept talking about.
Yeah, like, is it the Andaman Islands or something? Like where there's the... Yeah, occasionally you see people do little trips there, don't you?
Well, and they actually didn't even mention the islands. They said, like, you know, part of... Not the island, but I don't... Yeah, anyway.
And you were in Goa, were you? Is that right?
Yeah, Goa, G-O-A.
Yeah, and that was for a conference, was it?
They have all these signs all over that say, go slow.
Right.
Instead of a speed limit, and I thought, hello, it should say Goa slow.
And, so you were
there
for
a design conference. It's, They say it's the biggest one in India, and it was great. I was pleasantly surprised. Never been, and
Never been to India?
No.
Right.
I had various invites over the years, and never went. I was never actually that intrigued or something, and boy, it was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And how long were you there for?
5 days.
Yeah, so you got time to kind of see a little bit away from what you were doing?
Not too much, but what I did get a lot of interaction with the people, and they're super warm and friendly and welcoming, and nice.
You could really see that from you did a few posts on Instagram, right? And
yeah,
it seemed like you got a great welcome.
Yeah, bigger. I had no idea. It was there's somebody telling me that when I was doing this music magazine, Reagan, they couldn't get it in India. And so they would fly 5 hours to the nearest place that sold it to get the new issue.
They would fly 5 hours?
Yeah.
Wow, that's like across the continental states, isn't
That's
it?
a long flight for
so I was going to fly to Moscow.
For a $2.95 magazine.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, super welcoming. Really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm still kind of...
It must be surprising still to hear stories like that, to, the impact that something like Reagan had, where you go to somewhere like Goa. And
it is a bit.
And somebody says, somebody gives you a story like that.
Quite a few stories like that.
Yeah. Do you get that quite a lot then with your work? Do you get people?
It's not unusual. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the kind of fun or exciting thing is that it's, I'm also getting students, but then you get these people, oh man, Reagan, when I was in school, that was a thing. And so it's
Well, that's the impact of it, I guess. That piece of work. Did you, when you were involved in it, did you have any idea that it would have that kind of impact?
No. I had just done this magazine, Beach Culture, with out of Surfer Publications, and I felt at the time that was, well, actually, I still kind of feel that was my best magazine work. We did 6 issues. It was Steve Pesman. I think it was really what he intended to be what Surfer's Journal became, but it was actually called Surf Culture, which was a magazine they did once a year, and you bought an ad, and next on the page opposite it would be an article about your company, glowing article.
Right.
It was called Surf Culture. It came out once a year.
The classic model.
Yeah, but like ridiculously so.
Right.
And he had this idea that, well, maybe we could do something a little different, and that was the birth of Beach Culture magazine, which was actually called Surf Culture up until almost the first issue was printed. And I often think Pesman really, I think, saw Beach Culture being more what Surfer's Journal became than it was. And we took it, me and the editor kind of went.
You went a different way.
A little different direction. And, there's so many issues there. Surfer was so unconcerned about Pesman starting a new magazine that they gave him a free ad in an issue. It's a picture of Laird Hamilton cutting back on a yellow and pink striped board, announcing this thing called the Surfer's Journal.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Right.
That's how unworried, oh yeah, that sounds great.
That'll never last.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck with that one.
Flash in the pan, this thing.
Leaving a surf magazine to go start a surf magazine for older people. Good luck.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. And, who's standing? I got some kind of weird comment from the editor of... the publisher of Surfing magazine. He did something, and I posted something kind of unrelated, and he had a few comments, and I thought, well, there's 2 things that come to mind when I think of Surfer and Surfing, and of course those are great battle days when they were both kind of in their prime, but I would say two people come to mind: Darwin and Steve Pesman. If you want to really talk about Surfer and Surfing. Anyway, that's but
So why do you say? I've read that you've said this before about beach culture, but what was it about that makes you still look at it today as the work that you still look back so fondly?
It was done literally in the warehouse at Surfer Publications. They didn't quite know what to do with it. It was me and an editor, a guy named Neil Feynman, and we did the whole magazine. When I finished, I sent it to the printer. Nobody had to okay it.
You didn't have any kind of overseers, no publishers that were right.
No,
so you had very real freedom to
almost complete, and I was very aware of that. And kind of did every issue like it might be the last. And the amazing thing is, kind of we got 6 issues in 2 years. When we finally got enough ads sold, they would print an issue. But Surfer didn't really know what to do with it.
Right.
The ad guys and girls didn't really want it. It was like, and you have to sell beach culture too, and they're like, what? It's not Surfer.
Well, that probably does give you a bit of freedom, though, right? Because if there's
well, that's a good point. Yeah, because there was always a real disconnect with the editorial and then these ads that just didn't fit at all.
Yeah.
And that somehow was probably part of a deal that you also got a page in Surfer.
Yeah, sure.
Or you bought your ad in Surfer and you get a page in this new thing we're doing.
Yeah, and you get beach culture as well. So you had 2 years of basically kind of doing your own thing.
Yeah.
Were you creatively? Were you aware of the opportunity, and that was something that you took seriously as like, okay, I can just completely express myself through the work?
Pretty much. I mean, I think I was just so absorbed in the process and the whole thing, but I was always aware that it was a really unique situation. I mean, I had just come from a very conservative magazine on the East Coast called Musician. It was kind of a serious music magazine owned by Billboard Publications.
If I could ask, where are we in your in the kind of arc of your career then at this point? Have you? Is this before?
We're still on the way up.
But because obviously there's like the Transworld part of it as well. Did Transworld come after beach culture, or?
Well, that's a good question, and because it's getting so old now. But so the starting point for me, really, my whole career was Transworld Skateboarding Magazine. I was teaching high school in San Diego and Del Mar, Torrey Pines High School, and there was the main skateboard magazine was Thrasher.
Yeah,
and there was a
unique design proposition.
Pardon?
A unique design proposition.
Yeah,
as a magazine.
Yeah, but one that worked. I would say, and
always had that super strong tone and design language to it. Let's say.
Yeah, and there was a mother of a young skater who thought it was too out there and too radical for her son, and so she decided to start her own magazine.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
That explains that stylistic difference then.
And she got together with the owner of a skateboard truck company, Tracker Trucks, and Larry Balma. He was a great guy. And we'll do our own magazine. And it's not going to be all this radical, weird stuff that Thrasher does. We're going to make it clean and wholesome and good for young kids. So that was the birth of Transworld.
Really?
And,
right. And were you involved from the beginning?
They did 2 issues before me, and their only advertiser of any note was Stacy Peralta, Pal Peralta. Stacy looked at the magazine and basically told them, look, I want to support you. I think it'd be good for Thrasher to have some competition, but unless you get it together, I got to pull out. This thing.
I can't be in.
It's pretty embarrassing, and
right.
it really was, which is a little ironic because it actually had a pretty good, a soulful idea. I don't know how good an idea it was, but so the skaters took their own pictures, wrote their own stories, and did their own layout.
Right. Wow. Okay.
So that's, in theory, kind of cool, but it didn't work at all. It was just embarrassingly bad as a magazine, and not so bad that it was good, just corny.
Just didn't work.
Just and yet you had great skaters and blah blah blah. Anyway, that Stacy said, look, if you don't get this together, I'm out.
Right.
And they said, well, what do we do? Or how do we change? And we had a mutual friend, a guy named David Moran, who later went on to announce all the early ASP Pro Surf contests and stuff. And he had heard through him that I was starting to try to get involved in graphic design after surfing forever and being a teacher. And I think he kind of said, I don't know, maybe try this Carson guy. He's trying to get into graphic design, but do something.
Right. Wow, really?
Yeah.
So that's serendipitous.
And I can still remember being in the teacher lunchroom at Torrey Pines High School, getting a call about some guy wanting to know if I'd like to come up to Oceanside and talk about designing their skateboard magazine. And I'm just going, yes. How soon?
Right.
And so I would teach all day, and I'd teach all day, and then go up and do the magazine in the afternoons. And that was the start for me, the Transworld skateboarding. It took quite a while, I think, to I don't know what the word is, to get some of the same clout that Thrasher had already. And probably years, actually. And I think it eventually got it. But that was my schooling. I did it for 3 years. After that, I realized I was kind of becoming known as a skateboard guy, or a skate designer. And that's not why I was there. I mean, same thing at Surfer, the ad guys and a lot of people are just trying somehow to stay close to the sport. Well, I wasn't trying to do that in skating. That was kind of my avenue into this thing I had discovered as a second career, which was graphic design.
Sure.
But I was realizing after 3 years I was getting kind of typecast as a skate guy or the skate designer, so I purposely one summer sent out a ton of resumes, and that led to the next step. But before that, we launched Transworld Snowboarding.
Yeah, I was going to say, because there's work in the end of print, right, from Transworld Snowboarding.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started getting into snowboarding and seeing Transworld, like realising that you'd had a part in that. So was this going on at the same time as you were working on Transworld Skate as well? You were kind of doing both titles?
Yeah, we launched Transworld Skate, or Transworld Snowboard, which at the time was a difficult birth because the editor and probably the publisher were convinced that for this new sport to survive, it was going to have to get older people who had money and who skied. And that's how this new thing called snowboarding was going to survive.
Yeah.
So it had to have, according to them, a conservative look and feel, because we need the rich people who ski to make this sport really take off. And I'm thinking, well, no, I think it's a lot of the same people that skate and younger people, and I think we need to kind of speak to that. And I was overruled in the first couple issues. There couldn't be any more conservative and straight, even for me. And so I did, I think, just the first 2 issues and then left.
Right.
And of course, the sport was just a lot like skating, and skating and snowboarding have always been so much more progressive than surfing in terms of graphics.
I was going to say that's an interesting point. So you mean from that standpoint, as in like graphically, and visually?
Trying new things, and surfers are a surprisingly conservative group overall, even because they have this reputation of being something different than that. And when I redesigned Surfer magazine, I got a pretty good taste of that, is how conservative they are.
Yeah, people didn't like that.
No. There was a ton of hate mail. So I started Transworld, then I went back east, did a magazine called Musician. And after doing that for a year, a photographer at Surfer Publications, James Casmus, called me and said, hey, there's kind of a rumor that Pesman is thinking about starting a new magazine. I just want to let you know, maybe you should contact him or something.
Right.
I said, whoa, that'd be unreal. I got to come back to California and surf. And so I contacted Pesman, and he kind of said, well, I don't know. We're thinking about it. Maybe. I don't know. If you ever get out here, stop in or something. But yeah, it's really early.
Right.
So with that, I basically quit my job. Well, no, I got fired actually from music. They thought it was getting too radical. Flew out there, brought Pesmo a bottle of wine, and because he's a big wine guy, and said, "Hey, let's talk about this new magazine," and that became Beach Culture.
Right.
So continue that. So Transworld skateboarding, Transworld snowboarding,
musician
magazine,
yeah,
which
Beach
is,
Culture
from Billboard Publications.
Yeah.
Then Beach Culture, then Surfer, then Ray Gun.
Okay, so Surfer after Beach Culture. That's the lineage. Yeah. And did you got fired for musician? You said. So what? And that was because they just found the approach to not to their
too
taste.
Out there, too weird, too whatever.
Right. And so I guess that's the question that I'm interested in. So you were purposefully using these opportunities to develop your ideas and visual language, if you like. Was that something that did you often come up against people that didn't understand that or found it too difficult to get their heads around?
Well, I mean, I guess no is the short answer in a way, because I was able to do so much of it. This musician magazine was very conservative, East Coast Billboard Publications. I don't show any of that work in my lectures. I mean, it was still all very safe. But what it was doing for me is introducing me to the world of using outside illustrators, outside photographers, being able to pick from not only people who are in the building, but, and so I'd had all this freedom with Transworld. Then I did musician, where I had like a budget and I could actually bring in people from around the world, literally. And then that led to Beach Culture, which was just this nice mix of culture, music, fashion, some surf, and was able to kind of combine those. But yeah, there was some, the Transworld, I had a lot of freedom, if not almost total, but I was also learning. It was really my schooling.
Sure.
It was pre-computer, it was art boards. You had to figure this stuff out. How do you spec color and type and printer instructions, and just a whole different world, really.
Because it's quite quick after you've changed careers as well, right? This is only a short period of time we're talking about, presumably, from when you've changed from teaching to design.
Yeah.
And what was it that precipitated it originally for you to change career? Because it sounds like it was actually fairly late, really, to actually.
Yeah. Well, I was 26 the first time I heard the word graphic design.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It feels like it was actually quite far down the line.
First time I heard the word, and I was teaching high school and got this little flyer from the University of Arizona in Tucson announcing a 2-week graphic design workshop for high school seniors.
Right.
And they wanted me to post it and for the seniors to see. And I read this description about what they would do for 2 weeks. I thought, really? That's a profession? You can do that for a living?
So
that sounds really fun.
So it literally wasn't on your radar at all?
No.
As like a... And it was not, you'd never been interested in it at all?
No.
Had you had any kind of interest in art creation, visual, as when you were younger, had there been anything that had like given you a clue that this might be where you would?
That's a good question. In a way, no, but two things that strike me in that is when I was, 21, 22 maybe, running a surf shop in San Diego for Infinity surfboards, and they introduced a model of mine, and I needed a logo for this surfboard, and I thought, there's this guy that comes in. He's an artist. I'll have him do the logo. So in my early 20s, it never occurred to me to do my own logo,
right?
My own surfboard.
Okay, model. Yeah. So that's actually a bit of a...
So I have a guy who's kind of well known. Surfer used him a lot. He's really good. Peter Spacek is his name, and he's mentioned a lot in the Barbarian days. He's the main guy that they hang out with. He did a logo for the David Carson model from Infinity Surfboards. So that strikes me as almost weird in a way that I didn't think to do it myself.
Yeah, exactly. Like even 6 years earlier, you weren't like, I could do that.
No.
Yeah.
And then the other end of it is that, I learned to surf in Florida, in Cocoa Beach, Florida, when surfing was starting to go crazy, basically. Just kind of overtook the whole state, or certainly Cocoa Beach where I was. and you got your only connection to surfing in the outside world was basically Surfer magazine.
Yeah.
And occasionally, what was it? Some early versions of surfing. But so once every 2 months, you would get this thing, and then later once a month. And that was it. So today, all these years later, you could put down a stack of Surfer, in particular, but probably any surf magazine for that day. But Surfer magazines from the late '60s and maybe early '70s, and I could blindly pick any page, put my finger on it, and tell you that caption.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were that much of an avid...
Without any question. And I'm always correcting people on Facebook that, no, that's not Dewey Weber.
Yeah.
Look, you can tell. I mean, or that's Joe Smith, obscure ones too. So that to me, like, no big deal, obviously, but I think, okay, well, maybe that, I'm visual. I'm noticing these things. The minute I see that, I know that photo is blah, blah, blah. So that's the only little hint, maybe.
Yeah, because you obviously like just soaking it up.
I'm soaking it all in.
Yeah.
And even today, somebody told me, or not today, but recently, people told me, you're always scanning, aren't you? And yeah, I am. I know the font and that clock on the wall. I know there's nothing particularly interesting in here. I know this background color might work for these posters I have. But that's just what I do.
Yeah. So you think
have to force it.
So you think when you actually made the link of like, that could be something interesting, you already had this almost by osmosis, like you'd kind of absorbed all these ideas that perhaps informed when you did get the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it does kind of work like that, doesn't it? You kind of you're taking that on, especially if you're like as obsessed with something like surfing. It's a really good medium to kind of learn about things other than surfing as well, when it comes down to it. So what was it about that course that struck your interest so much that led you to kind of make such an abrupt change?
Well, it was a combination of things. I had a really good teacher, a guy named Jackson Bolts, who I'm still friends with today, that would take a class to his house for barbecues and parties, and just a really good guy. And I think that was a huge part of it. And then just, you can be creative. You can do stuff with your hands. You can, I did my little business card, and hand-done stuff. And I think especially after teaching high school, which was fine. It was okay. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I think I was okay, but it's not how you want to be in a job. You want to. And unfortunately, most teachers are kind of in something similar. A lot of them are, where you should be in it because you can't wait to get in there the next morning and show them this new plan, other than kind of going through the motions. And that's kind of where I was with teaching. The hours were good. It gave me a lot of time to surf in the afternoons, summers.
Did you just fall into it? Like, was it just something that you ended up doing?
Kind of. I was running a surf shop in San Diego, Infinity Surfboards, which was great while I went to college at San Diego State. I mean, what a great job running a surf shop, going to school. It was just like, competing, appearing in ads, and, blah, blah, blah. It was pretty cool. But then all of a sudden, I graduated, my friends graduated, and they all went on, and I'm still standing in the surf shop. And there was a time, especially like rainy winter days, and you're just like, you've read all the magazines, you've fondled all the boards, you're just like, and somebody walks in and goes, so tell me about these surfboards. You're just like, ah!
Yeah.
And I just realized that I was kind of in a rut, and that led to me saying, okay, well, maybe I should do something with this teaching credential I've got,
right?
And just felt I needed to force myself into something new. I felt I was in a rut.
Yeah,
just standing in the surf shop, basically.
So when you did the course and you started to change direction, was it an immediate thing? Did you recognize, like, from that point that it was that was something that you should pursue and that was actually what you should be doing?
Yeah. I'd say at the end of those 2 weeks, I've never had anything so clear, and everything shifted. I mean, I moved. I was, living, work, everything shifted. I never questioned it, never looked back. It's just, it was, I wasn't really looking, but it was so clear.
Right.
And still is. And, I think I'm really fortunate to have found that thing, whatever it is. It's, I think, pretty critical to find it. Maybe not critical isn't quite the right word, but find that thing you're passionate about. And in my lectures, I say, what's the definition of a good job? And the best one I've heard is if money wasn't an issue, would you do that same work? And if you would, you've got a great job.
Yeah, sure.
And I always feel I make my living from my hobby. I'm fortunate in that.
And when you came to that realization, did the development of your style come with that? Was that something that you also began to explore and also began to understand at the same time? Because obviously you're very well known for, it's almost insulting to say this, very well known for a particular style of design. So how long, you understand what I'm getting, like how long before you started to appreciate that perhaps your ideas were unusual and were unique to you? Was that something that started to develop at the same time?
Well, in my case, I didn't have any formal training, and I never learned all the things I wasn't supposed to do. I just started doing what made sense to me. I didn't know anything about grids or formats, or all of a sudden I had this skateboard magazine to design. And the only starting point for me was to read the article, maybe look at the images, maybe look at the envelope that was sent in, or the back of it for a stamp or something, and just say, wow, what would that look like? What's the tone of this article, and what would that look like? And then I just start kind of playing, really. So it wasn't like, how can I do something different, or let's break the rules, or
like a manifesto, or like
no, not at all. I never learned all the things I wasn't supposed to do.
Yeah,
I just started doing what made sense to me. And you're in this environment of a skateboard magazine, so that's a pretty good place to not know the rules. I don't believe you have to know the rules to break them. That's as stupid as don't judge a book by its cover. Like, no, if the designer's done their job, you should be able to judge a book by its cover. And where did that come from?
Yeah, that is a very fair point. Yeah. But nevertheless, there are conventions in those worlds, like in skateboarding and like, you mentioned surfing earlier. It is conservative, and even visually they're conservative, and certainly
surf especially.
Yeah, and there are rules, like in inverted commas, like about how things should look and how like photographs should look, and they should be this color and they should be this, and that those cultures do have that language. And I think they can be pretty hidebound because of that, because they're such niche cultures, and people get protective of it. Did you come up against that when you were working on something like Transworld or?
Well, not so much Transworld. I mean, and I think people could see early that it was an improvement.
Which would help.
And then the more the problem with the early Transworld were some of the hardcore skaters who were involved early didn't like the fact that I wasn't a hardcore skater.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at. You will come up against that, right? You will come up against people that are like, no, this is how it should be. And
definitely came across it in early in the skateboard mag, but it looked better, and the advertisers were liking it, and it was growing in ads, but some of the hardcore guys, not so. I don't know if it was so much the look or what I was doing, but just the fact that I wasn't a hardcore skater.
Yeah.
So that rubbed them wrong, and that took a while, and I don't know if we ever got over it, to be honest.
You don't strike me as somebody that's that bothered by that kind of thing, though.
No, I was too absorbed in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Whenever, it's like people with a music magazine later say, "Wow, did you ever get to meet some of all the rock stars or whatever?" And yeah, a few, but I was more concerned about the next issue and the layout and maybe the cover, rather than to go up to LA for the photo shoot or something. It's just like very, very absorbed in what I was doing.
Yeah. So what is it? Can you pinpoint some things about beach culture that you're particularly proud of now, or was it more the memory of that particularly creative time that you look back on fondly?
Well, I think the issues hold up really well. I think there's, when I look at an old Ray Gun, the music magazine, there's pages I like, pages I don't, pages I think, oh, that's good, and then, oh, what was I thinking? It's kind of a bit all over the place, but beach culture held up really well. So it's a combination of, it was so pure. I had to borrow lunch money, I had to borrow gas money to drive up from Del Mar to Dana Point, where we did the magazine, in the warehouse at Surfer. It was fine. It wasn't at all about that. It was a real labor of passion, or passion of labor. That's not the word. But I think the results are solid. I think the 6 issues hold up really well, and where later the Ray Gun work, the music magazine was, there's some good stuff and some horrible stuff. It was kind of all over the place.
Well, Ray Gun had a platform, right? That was actually like a distributed magazine.
People could find it. Yeah, that was the difference.
Yeah, so
we had no idea.
I mean, that puts a whole new commercial slant on it.
Exactly.
And suddenly you I imagine, I'm just guessing, but I imagine that leads to less freedom, right? Necessarily, because there's advertisers involved and there's publishers and there's an audience.
Well, I would say normally that would be correct, but with Ray Gun, no, I still had complete freedom. And when I finished an article, I sent it to the printer.
Right.
An issue. When I finished an issue, I sent it directly to the printer. Publisher didn't see it till he got a printed copy in his hand.
Really?
So, yeah. Again, very unusual situation.
That's
what allowed it to flourish in a way. You hire people for what they can do, and then you gotta get out of the way and let them do it.
Yeah, but it's a rare publisher that's going to do that for you.
Yes, very rare.
Yeah,
very rare, unheard of, actually, I'd say. And I was aware of that, especially with beach culture, and then by Ray Gun, I was more just all I knew. So I just didn't think anything of it. Sending the issue myself to the printer and.
So the bigger sort of platform again didn't really faze you. It was just another opportunity to work.
No, because I still had total freedom, and it was rock and roll music.
Some incredible collaborators.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the best illustrators and photographers and writers from anywhere. And
yeah.
And we still had no budget, and I got some of the best people in the world because I offered them something. No matter how famous or successful they become, that they still wanted, and that was freedom to do what they do.
Yeah.
And I'd say, you got a full page or maybe a couple pages, and here's the theme. And sometimes they'd say, well, you need some sketches. You want me to send it to you? And I say, no. When you would sign it, send it to me, and it'll be fine because I picked you because I know your work. I know what you do. When you would put your name on it, send it, and 99% of the time it worked great. And you hire people for what they do, and then you got to let them do it. I always felt strong about that.
So, how long did that period last, like Ray Gun?
I did 30 issues, and I think again that was 3 years.
Okay, and then you said it was Surfer after that.
And then let's see, no, Ray Gun. Then commercial people started noticing. I got a call one New Year, literally the week after New Year's, I got a call from David Byrne wanting a.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I'm in my little office in Del Mar. Yeah,
David who?
Yeah. And wanting a video package for a concert and a poster and stuff, and then the same week I got a call from Nike, or their agency, or White and Kennedy, about a big print campaign, and I turned to my one assistant or intern or whatever and said, well, I think this is going to be a good year. Because up to that point, it had just been magazines with little or no money, and that was fine. It didn't matter.
Were you doing commercial work at the same time, though, as
very little.
The editorial, right? So really, it was all very editorial
little. Maybe occasional. I did something for Gary Linden surfboards. I did some stuff for Rusty surfboards. Later did a lot of Quicksilver work. But no, for the most part, no. I was just the magazine. That
right,
was the focus.
It's purely editorial.
Lived and breathed, yeah.
Am I right in thinking you did some stuff for Burton snowboards as well at some point?
Yes. That would be correct, and it's a similar story. Maybe we started Transworld snowboarding, and the inside cover went to this new startup kind of snowboard company on the East Coast called Burton, and we'd be kind of happy with the issue, and then they send us their ad, and it would be, I can still see it. It's a guy jumping over a sidewalk. And no snow or anything. He's over the sidewalk on the snowboard or whatever it was at that point, and the cement is on fire. And it was early, way before. It was actually pre-Photoshop, so it was like it wasn't. Anyway, it's just stupid. We got a whole.
I've never seen that. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, well, if you find the first or second issue, it'll be the inside cover.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it sounds like it could be cool, but it wasn't. It was just corny.
That's going to be all in the execution, isn't it?
This handwritten logo that was just bad hand lettering. That now it's so old that they've actually used it again, and it feels better than it did 30 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, and they used that one, and they used the bar I did for them, but. So we got a hold of Bird and said, look, what about if we do your ads for you?
Right. Yeah.
And so I started doing the ads for Burton. And then when I moved to the East Coast to take this job at the Musician magazine, I became Burton's first art director, outside art director.
Right.
It was so early, Jake paid me in equipment.
Really?
That's how early it was in the Burton thing.
Really?
Yeah.
So you got a couple of performers lying around.
Yeah, he and his wife used to take me, basically taught me how to snowboard. But yeah, so.
Yeah. So the commercial thing came like the main sort of commercial career came post Raygun then essentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how did that affect the work in any way, or did you still just have the same focus?
Well,
because obviously you have those commercial demands, it's a different proposition.
I mean, it's a little different. It just becomes different challenges. The people who were scared to death of my work or hated it or whatever didn't come to me. So right away I got less battles than a lot of people might have.
Because they knew what they were hiring.
Well, not necessarily, but they knew they wanted something different, or he's the guy or something. So right away I got less of that than a lot of people. But I don't know. I just kind of saw it as different challenges. I did stuff for Microsoft, and I did stuff for Bose speakers and headphones, and pretty corporate conservative clients. And but for me, it just became a different challenge. It's like, really, I have to use your font, and we have all these restrictions. And as a designer, you can say, well, screw it, I'm going to do whatever I want, or you could say, wow, that's interesting. How could I do something that still works for them? But I'm happy with as a designer. And so I just kind of saw it like that. And I always had an eclectic group of stuff, so I wasn't only focused on that I only show them things I think is better than what they've got. But yeah, I mean, it's part of it. Even the skateboard magazine, I was very aware of the audience. I think they demanded a certain maybe aesthetic or look or approach. Well, they deserved it. If that's quite the right word, but you have to keep them in mind, and regardless of the client, or there's an audience and there's something you're trying to say. It happened to work well with my lack of training and kind of way I see things, and I don't know where that comes from. It worked well in a skateboard, then surf, then rock and roll atmosphere.
Sure.
No training, and this kind of it gelled. But always, you remember, who's the audience? What else are they seeing? What's the competition? What are we trying to say? What's the purpose here? And so, to do, I look at Surfer magazine now. It's designed by software. There doesn't seem to be any human involved in it, which of course they would disagree. But it's just sterile, And I think that's a disservice to the writers, to the readers, to everybody. So to do a skateboard magazine in a traditional way or something, no, that's not right. That's not the sport. It's not the people. It's. But when I was kind of jumping around, but when I redesigned Surfer, they got a lot of hate mail. That's when I really learned how conservative surfers are. And, because there are people. I decided there was a bunch of people, and it was before the longboard thing had kind of came back. So you had you had this group that their surf experience was a new issue of Surfer once a month in their mail slot or whatever, and all of a sudden it was different.
Yeah,
and they were pissed.
We don't like this.
Yeah, what is this?
What's happened to this? Yeah, who's this guy?
It was a pretty. So and that lasted a couple 3 issues, and then the ads started looking more like that, and it became no big deal. So something about the shock of the new, and But skaters and I'd say later snowboarders were a lot more progressive design-wise.
More able to accept.
And now I think it's kind of a segue into a little different area. Now that surfing has gotten so cleaned up and so mass, those blue-railed softboards, we used to kind of joke, everybody surfs. It's really true. Everybody surfs. And it's just so generic with the global home of surfing and all this stuff. At some point, I started thinking lately that what used to be the attraction to surfing was kind of the outsiderness or a bit of the rebel spirit or the characters or the whole thing. And that's being sanitized daily, dramatically. And so what used to be maybe the actual riding or surfing and the actual characters has really been sanitized and disappeared. And the only place I think it shows up now, that spirit, I would call it, of surfing, which is really ironic now, is in some of the writing.
Yeah, you think that?
I think that's really interesting.
So where do you see that?
Stab and Beach Grit.
Yeah, so you think that because obviously I think Beach Grit in particular is an attempt to capture that, right?
Attempt to capture
the spirit that you're talking about. To have that stance, to have that kind of.
Yeah, maybe overly so, but I don't know if not so much the intentions, but to me that's the things that attracted me to surfing early, is these kind of rebel spirits and the guys with a really good style or something different, or the screw you attitude, whatever it was. That seems all gone. And the only place I see it now is in the writing of those two places online. And it took me quite a while. Like, this is like recent revelations. Like, wow, that's because we try to, they're homogenizing surfing so much, and surf clothing sales are down, and Nike wants to get out. Well, surprise! It's all these vowels riding these blue softboards. Who wants to wear clothing that represents that, or the global home of surfing? It's so I just had to think, wow, that spirit, because forever in surf magazines, especially when I was doing Surfer, the writing was always pretty standard, decent, forgettable. Just reporting, and and so there was none of this stuff going on now. There was a few of the Derek Hind and maybe some early Mikey Dora stuff, but so anyway, I don't want to over push that, and there's a lot of debate in the letters and all that stuff, but there's some people taking some pretty good risks in just the writing, the art of writing. It's the craftsmanship, and that's what I think's been lost in graphic design too. The craftsmanship. The computers make a lot of the decisions for designers now. The space between columns, whatever. We've gotten kind of lazy, and I have disagreements with both of those places, but the spirit of like mucking with things, to me, that's where it exists now in surfing.
Has your process changed over the years, personally, the way that you approach?
I don't think so. I might be too close to it to really judge, but I never went back and learned all the rules, or I never adopted a grid. I still, who's the audience? What are we trying to say? What am I getting after reading this article or listening to the music? What would that look like? How can I reinforce that? And I think it's pretty much the same.
Yeah,
actually,
to that approach, to try and sort of see where it fits, and to understand a bit more about the intention to help you.
You can have the best written article in the world, but if nobody bothers to read it because it looks boring, then that's a disservice to everybody, the writer and the reader, and. Yeah, I mean, it might be flush left all caps. And yeah, it's readable, it's fine, but what it's really saying is don't read me, keep moving, don't click. And yeah, that's a hard sell if people don't get that or understand that basic concept.
Yeah,
what do you
sure.
mean? I can read it and it's pretty clever, it's pretty funny, but it might be saying keep going, don't stop, nothing important here, nothing interesting.
So that spirit that you describe about surfing, was that what originally attracted you because when did you start surfing? How old would you have been?
Well, I would say it was right before surfboards went short.
Okay.
So and my biggest influence, or I don't know if influence is the right word, but the person I looked up to would have been Mikey Dora, for sure. So,
who basically epitomizes this spirit that you're talking about.
Yeah. So I'm like 12, and here's this guy doing this like really out there stuff, but yet he backed it up with a really good style.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was my first real like surf hero or whatever at 12 years old.
But it was what he represented,
that kind of rebel spirit,
yeah.
And but yet sincere, but legitimate. Like sure, some of it was an act or whatever, but it was, he could back it up. He had the style, and
he backed it up with the way that he lived as well, didn't he?
And the whole thing.
Yeah, he certainly wasn't putting it on by the end.
Yeah.
What's the book called for the
All for a Few Good Ways? No, All for a Few Perfect Ways.
Yeah, and it's actually quite a bleak story by the end of it. Like just
kind of lonely. And,
yeah, exactly.
A small dark room and living with his. No, not even his dog. He lost the dog in the fire, which of course that brings up, more recently Derek Hine, which I.
Oh, that's really
similar thing.
That's really awful story.
Yeah.
Really,
horrible.
really horrible. Yeah. Yeah, God, what can you say about that, really? That's just awful, isn't it? It's like a friend of ours. Do you know Jamie Brisick?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Really well.
Yeah. So we went and saw him in Malibu, and similar thing, isn't it? It's just awful, isn't it? Like.
Yeah, I keep meaning to. I had a house just down the road from where he was, and
on Point Doom.
Yeah, and I don't know if it survived or not, but.
Yeah, but Mickey, when you read that book, and you really get the impression that. You can't sustain what he did for an act, really. That was obviously his life, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was obviously what he was doing, and the way that he expressed himself, basically, for right or wrong.
Yeah.
So you feel like surfing's lost by the sounds of it. I'm guessing you weren't tuned into the Freshwater Pro the last.
I was aware it was going on, but I wasn't watching it. But certainly at night when I knew it was over, I went to see the results. And I thought it's really intriguing how the two main places I go to, but also I'll go to Surfer. I mean, they're better online than they are in print. That they seem to only talk about like from when there was 8 guys left to the final, which is really interesting. So we didn't have to go through all the other. I would think there must be some disappointed pros. What do you mean? In the early heat, I had that one way. There's none of that. It's just pretty much here's the guys that won, and so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Beach Grit definitely have used that event as a bit of a kind of battleground in a way about this whole debate about this exact thing that you're talking about. Like what does this say about the state of surfing now, and they're clearly not seeing many positives in that, really, in the way that they've addressed it. Stuff like wave pools and the thing that you were talking about, and like the homogenization of surfing.
It's just very generic. It's trying to, I have a friend that owns a production company that I think it was still ASP went to come up with a whole new look, and he was told we want to look like the Super Bowl of football, American football.
You can kind of see that with the way they've done it.
And this guy, to his credit, it was his company, it's a big production company, but he said, "Gosh, we don't really think surfing is like football," and he was totally shut down. I said, no, we're going after mainstream. We're going to take this thing big. So you still see that. It's of course it's fine and it's professional and it just lacks any spirit. It doesn't lack any. What draws people to the sport is still some of that rebel attitude, or doing things a little different, or it should be leading, and there's nothing they do graphically that leads. It follows, and it's solid, and it's like the logo. The new logo change is something you'd expect to see in a mall for a Life is Good store or something. It's harmless, it's bland, no one's going to be pissed off about it, and it kind of works. So harmless, bland people will find nothing offensive in that logo, and it works. And I could see it in a Life is Good store in a mall in Nebraska. So it's and that's always the inherent problem, is that it's fine, it works. And I watch the podcast, as I dare say, as much as anybody, pretty addicted to it still. And we get a lot of better stuff than we ever had. But nobody is referencing it outside of that world. None of the other sports or anything is saying, have you seen what they're doing with the surfing thing? Check out these titles, or check out what they did with their jerseys for the surf league. It's all this generic, solid stuff that comes from a mindset of whatever worked. I mean, it's an easy hit, but whatever works on Oprah or SUP.
It could be,
I don't know. It's just I think
could be so
we've
much
lost something there.
It could be so much more, though. I think that's the thing, isn't it?
It should be leading.
It should be leading.
Check out what the Surf League has done with their stats or whatever it is, and there's none of that.
It seems a bit underachieving to basically say, we're going to copy American football, or
it's solid, it's fine, and it's better than it's probably ever been.
Yeah, but it isn't creative, and it isn't
has
leading.
none of this. I would say the spirit of surfing, and none of the insane moves or waves or anything is being represented in how it's presented to the public. And that's what the public loves about it, or is intrigued by the whole early, beach person living,
exactly,
kind of rebel. And now we're just like everything else, and solid, and there'll be a lot of cuts, and there'll be, in the title, and it seems fine, but something's been lost.
Yeah, sounds like you're still an avid consumer of surf media in the same way that you were when you were a kid, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I get. Yeah, it's hard for me to get much done when there's a competition on. I don't even like calling it competition, but that's a word I don't use. But absolutely.
Yeah, and the same with print and film in the surf industry. You still very hooked into all that.
Not as much film as I don't know why. I don't seem to see a lot of the ones I heard talked about. But I'm always. Ironically, I'll make a point to go see if the new Surfer's Journal has come.
Yeah.
but and devour it that night, and so very much. I could give you a rundown of all that happened in the last few contests, and what should have happened, and what didn't happen, and why this person and that person, and you have just there's so many issues. I'm way too involved, and it's like you have these people that I think that what's really not given enough attention is got to be the qualifying series, because you have these group, about half of them, there's always a few that fall off, and they claw their way back on, and they fall off again. It's just like, they need to put more attention to the qualifying series, because they're not the best surfers in the world. There's some of the best surfers in the world are in there. But this thing about the best, no, there's some of those guys are probably some of the best in the world. But there's also plenty of guys that surf better than most of those people who aren't on tour.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think, and then as a graphic designer thing, I notice I literally go all over the globe, and a lot of the places are surf places. I've yet to see somebody wearing a WSL T-shirt, to see a sticker on a computer.
It's not massively aspirational, I don't think.
To see a sticker on the back of a car.
Yeah.
It used to be all that. I did these Eddie Would Go stickers for Quicksilver. They're sold out. You couldn't, I mean,
the posters,
and there's people in the North Shore that have each year, and there's all this stuff, and that's something I think is a pretty good indicator. And I've yet to see a WSL. It's so somebody ought to be thinking. So why is that? But I don't think they obviously don't care. It's solid, and it's not embarrassing. It's just.
They should give you a call.
Missing somehow.
Would you do it if you got that call?
Well, I never got that call, and I applied a few times.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because I'd see something come up, and I'm sure I don't know. And then I did this thing with Beach Grid where it was probably sunk any potential where
Team Beach Grid.
Derek said, "Hey, you want to do some logos for the WSL? I hear they're changing their logo," and I just, that'd be fun.
Brilliant.
Cool. Yeah, and
That's hilarious.
I just did just like the most kind of screwed up things you could imagine. Had some fun with it. Okay, here, and he ran them all, and here's new logo ideas from. Which is never how it would have happened. You would have it would have been two-way. You would have talked with them. You got some idea where they're going. It would have a whole different thing. Besides, I had these pretty wacky things and sent them out there. And I guess I have to think anybody in the organization would have seen those and just go, stay away from this guy. There's no way Ofer would use any of those.
It's going to be interesting to see how it pans out because I completely agree with you. I mean, I actually have no interest in watching surf contests at all. Never watch them. Don't care.
So, but see, if they're the global home of surfing, you should be like following them.
Yeah, and I think I'm like a kind of a classic floating voter as well because I think occasionally I would think, I should watch that, but I'm just not interested. But you're right. Like you would think there's this whole constituency of people like me who surf and who should be engaged by this, and all the ingredients are there: personalities, great surfing, great waves. It's all there, but it is just so fucking dull, isn't it? And I'm definitely not that interested. It just seemed like a really wasted opportunity.
Yeah, and I just something where they've got they're trying to get all this content and change all these things. But
but even that's all kind of quite weak, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just kind of you're not driven to want to see it or check it out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think next year is going to be obviously with the Olympics and another kind of chapter in it, which with the Olympics next year.
Oh well, I have a lot of thoughts on that too. I'm following it, and I have a nephew who's who's a tennis champion and has been in a lot of the Olympics for handicapped. He's in a wheelchair.
Oh wow, for the Paralympics.
Yeah.
Oh wow, how amazing.
And I know. I have a sense of why those guys are trying so hard to get in there. I mean, that is going to blow away any experience they've had at any of these WSL contests.
Yeah, of course.
It is a massive, the opening parade or start.
It's huge.
It's just, that's going to overshadow any trophy or, some standing on the podium somewhere. So anyway, so we'll see. And whoever gets the gold, that person is a part of history.
Yeah.
Even that sounds funny. Gets the gold.
It doesn't sound like surfing, really, does it? Yeah.
And then you get to this whole other thing where we finally invented a perfect wave. We've got a perfect wave. We did it, and everybody's bored of it already.
Yeah.
No, I don't think anybody saw that coming.
No.
We did it. It's got a tube. It goes forever. It's there, and we're bored of it.
Yeah, that definitely says something about the human condition, that, doesn't it?
Maybe
we've got perfection. 2 years later.
I realize I
that's really boring.
I clicked through some guy, halfway through his 10-second tube somewhere because I've seen it so many times, and you kind of get it. And there's stuff where 10 years ago, you go, oh my God! So we're inundated with so much stuff.
I really like William Finnegan's article in the New Yorker. I'm sure you read it about Kelly's pool. Did you read that one?
Recent?
Maybe a year ago.
What was it about?
About surfing Kelly's wave pool.
I must have. I love his book.
Yeah, it was great. It was basically about this as obviously only he can express it. But it was great. It was basically like, you know, what happens when you create perfection, and what does it say about us that we're already bored of it?
Yeah.
Basically.
I don't think anybody saw that coming. Wouldn't that be amazing?
So how often are you surfing? Because you've got your place in the... Right?
Yeah, well, wherever it is, I have this place. No, yeah, I've been on the schedule now for about 20 years, where in the winter, anywhere from 2 to at the most 6 months, I go down the great, if not near perfect, when it breaks, right-hander, and literally in my front yard. I jump off the yard and take a few strokes, and you're in the lineup. There's no drift, no current. It's predominant winds offshore. So I do that every winter now for the last 20 years, and from, like I said, 2 to 6 months, and then the rest of the year I'm wherever.
Yeah.
And for me, that schedule works really well.
I think that'd work really well for me as well.
Yeah, it's just like, well, you know, like I'm not surfing year round, but when I'm surfing, it's a really good warm water, long right, and every season I get it to myself. I figure as long as that's still happening, it's working.
Nice.
It can be inconsistent, not as much as people think, but yeah, that schedule works for me good. Like I know it's coming up. I'm already starting to think, okay, it won't be long now. I've got a couple new boards ordered, and so that's coming up again. And then it's gone. But then I remember maybe it gets back to an old Dora quote where he says, "When there's waves, I'm totally involved, and when there's none, it doesn't exist."
I mean,
that's a bit extreme, but that was his quote. You know,
yeah, and again, that's pretty sane. Pretty sane attitude, I would say.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't surf year round, but when I surf, it's the real deal, and I'm, you know, of course, still all short boards. That's been notable in the last just few months, where the WSL is definitely making a push for the longboard thing again. And we're seeing a lot more of that. And
what did you say? The Val market.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And yeah. But yeah, just, you know, why does Nike want out of the surf business? So who wants to dress like I don't know.
Well, I've got one more question for you. I guess the question is, what's inspiring you right now? And doesn't necessarily need to be surfing. What are you getting? What are you seeing that inspires you?
Well, for me, it's just kind of a daily thing, really. I mean, it sounds a little cliche or trite, but I'm always taking photos and noticing things, and I've just got a ton of stuff after a week in India, and yeah, I can't say, oh, I'm watching this magazine or this show, or it's really just hopefully continually growing or progressing, but just being able to. I'm just drawn to it. I've been doing these hand collages for the last year or so, or just stuff I collect in my travels. I tear them up, move them around by hand, and I'm really enjoying it. There's no client, there's no particular reason, and in a way it's kind of pure design, because there's no right or wrong. It's just trusting yourself to know when you got it or when to stop, and you're not even trying to do that, but you're moving this stuff around, and at some point you go, oh, that's done. Oh, nice. I don't know where that comes from, but yeah, I got a whole slew of pictures of old weird billboards in India, and yeah, I don't know. I'm very fortunate, I think, in that I don't have to force it. I'm just drawn to stuff, and I think kind of a consumer of a lot of things, or no, that's not the right word, but observer and aware of stuff, and. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a problem with motivation. Like I always thought it's strange when people talk about writer's block, and I never get that in design. It's everything is its own unique solution or process, or you know, I can't read something or look at some images and have no reaction. So the idea of having no idea where to go, or having like design block or something. Maybe if I had a grid and a system, it was just just kind of blindly running stuff, well, then you get bored and you're not doing good work anyway. But yeah, I'm just, I'll go back tonight and see if any cool jobs came in on email and go from there.
Oh, well, that's an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks for having me. That was a nice surprise.
So there you go. That was me and David Carson, and what an absolute surf geek he is, eh? It's not on the recording, but the first thing he said to me when we sat down was, have you seen the new Carve magazine where they misidentified Malibu in print? And subsequently I saw that Beach Grit had run a piece on that, and they talk about how they were tipped off by a famous unnamed tipster who I'm willing to bet, having met him, is David Carson. Didn't have the heart to mention also that I'm technically a VAL myself. That's vulnerable adult learner, if you're wondering. A phrase again popularised by Beach Grit. Not sure David would have approved really if I told him that I did actually own a Mick Fanning foamy. But there you go. Anyway, meeting David and realising that he's basically a prankster and a surf geek went a long way to explaining why he's managed to retain his freshness and interest throughout the most storied career in graphic design. If you want to find out more about David, his book, The End of Print, is a great place to start. The latest edition has a foreword by none other than David Byrne. Or his Instagram is, as you might expect, a treasure trove, easy for me to say, of that unique Carsonian perspective. Anyway, housekeeping corner. I got an email off a listener, which was nice. Colin McKenzie, who's corresponded with the podcast before. I'm going to read it out. Hi, Matt. Congratulations on reaching the cusp of triple digits with Looking Sideways. It's maybe an old talking point now, but I, for one, am grateful that you're not some big studio operation with lots of equipment. You could equate it to somebody with an expensive hi-fi playing shit music against somebody out and about with a cheap Walkman playing Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet, outstanding music brackets. In other words, being able to travel lightly and quickly to your interviewees is surely one of your biggest strengths. Top quality audio is nice to have, but personally I wouldn't be hung up on it. Zoom should sponsor you. Good tip, that. I appreciate the content of the conversations you're having above all else. The Nick Housefield interview is just one example of that. What an amazing story. If you are heading out to Portland, which I've talked about before, the one contact you should meet, I suggest, is John Rattray. Rick Curran at Skateboard Scotland could surely help with that. A one-time pro for Zero, John's life was shaken with the death of his sister. I suggest you check out his blog, thepredatorybird.com, which details his work with suicide prevention projects like The Good Ed and Why So Sad. Great idea. This is me, obviously. I might try and do that if I end up out in Portland. Anyway, this is Colin again. We're starting to get worried during your recent hiatus. It crossed my mind that it might have been dog-related. Glad you're back. I really enjoy the show. All the best, Colin McKenzie. Thanks, Colin. Appreciate that. Appreciate you asking after Peg as well. Peg's doing fine. I do get the occasional message about Peg because I've mentioned him on the show and his health issues at various points. He's actually got an operation next week where he's going to have a pretty gnarly operation on one of his front legs at the super vet of television fame, and he's going to be out of action for about 8 weeks. But to be honest, I think me and my better half Boog are just quite looking forward to getting it sorted out, really. We're assured that he's going to be fine once the operation's done, and judging by the way he bounced back from the last one, I think that's probably about right. So episode 99, which means coming up next is episode 100. I've only been trailing it for about the last 3 months, yeah, but nice milestone, this one. As people might have gathered from what I've been saying over the months, I started the podcast on a complete whim, really just thought, oh, that's quite a good idea, I might see if I can do that myself, and here we are 100 advertising free episodes later, and I'm pretty proud of what I've created, to be honest. Got a big audience out there who seem to really appreciate it. So like I said last episode, I'd love to hear from you on this occasion, the great Looking Sideways listening public. You can email me at podcast@wearelookingsideways.com or contact me at Instagram over at @WeLookSideways. One of the things I usually do over there is post the messages I receive on Instagram stories, which works out really well because it tends to start a dialogue between listeners. So yeah, let me know what you think about the show and how it's been going for the last 100 episodes. And also it's time to start planning the next 100 episodes. Got a few things lined up. Looks like we are going to be doing a book, me and Owen, from the Looking Sideways California trip, and we're also going to do a live show and gallery exhibition to promote that one. So that's likely to be in the new year. I'll keep you posted on that. Like I say, plotting the trip to Portland. Could be a Portland omnibus. I might do a post on Insta asking for suggestions on that. Whatever happens, I'll be chatting shit about it on here. So make sure you subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to get your podcasts, because people are pretty picky about that, I've realised. And yeah, keep in touch. Let me know if you're enjoying it. All right, that's it for this week. Thank you, David Carson, for being such an epic sport with this whole one. And thank you for listening. I'll see you next time. Nice one.